I spend my life researching and teaching people how to live a powerful life. I am a believer. I stand for the transformation of humanity. I have found my purpose. My name is Gabrielle McGee, and I am the rebellious therapist.
So welcome to my season 2, episode 2 of the Rebellious Therapist podcast. And I want to say hi to Ciara. Thank you for coming on and
Hello.
being my sort of partner in crime on these podcasts. So today what we're going to cover is something that every human being on the planet suffers from. It's all part of us, and it's something that causes so much damage. It's like, talk about a hidden virus. It's worldwide, and we are talking about the inner critic or the inner bully. So I think today what we want to talk about is to explain how it all works and give you some tips. As always, the tips, the most important parts of these podcasts is to give people tips and give you value of using some of the information in your life to really improve and move forward. So yeah, Ciara, so it's something we talk a lot about.
Well, it's something you bring to our therapy sessions all the time. Turn down the volume on your inner critic.
Yeah.
That's your inner critic speaking. So I think it's really, like, what I hope as well from this podcast is that we bring awareness to people who maybe don't know they have one, that is actually it, and it's not the true human being that you are. It's like something you're born with. Like, nobody escapes it. It's a part of the brain. It's the emotional part of the brain called the limbic part of the brain. And we all have one. Nobody escapes it. And it's not good or bad. It just is. But we do have to learn how to manage.
Turn the volume down.
Manage it, turn the volume down, and be aware, of what's reality and what's not.
Very good.
Now, I'm saying all this upon my research, but I think my inner critic has been running the show for the last while.
Yeah.
So it's not that because I know or I'm educated that I'm fully free from it. It's a constant, everyday task, and it can be heightened in some situations in your life by stress, like you were talking about, or it can be calm in other situations. So why do you use it what's so important about it, really?
Well, I think the importance is to actually understand it, right? A lot of the times it's unconscious, right? So it's running the show, it's talking to you, and it's really leading you into the emotional process of how you feel about yourself. Now, I want to go back to the part where you said, you were born with it, right? So there's a part of the brain that 200 years ago, so they've done some research and they've looked at the brain 200 years ago. And that part of the brain was much smaller. It's evolved now as we've evolved in our human process. Like, our evolvement the part of the brain that's negative has got bigger. So it's already there waiting on us before we even get here as part of being human. And unfortunately, even till today, people have gone to the grave not knowing that ran the show for them, which is really, it's really sad. Now, our job today is to have people be able to recognize it more and to be able to take control of it, because you're never going to get rid of it. It's not going anywhere, right? And what you can do is turn the volume down. So a lot of people have it confused as well between the inner child and the inner critic. They think it's all one. And I hear people saying things like, befriend your inner critic. That's a great idea, but it actually doesn't work. But what they're really saying, befriend your inner child. But that's further down the line. We'll talk about that more, right? So if you're listening to this and you want to just close your eyes for a minute listen to that negative voice. Just close your eyes and just see where you can identify that negative voice saying you're no good, you're not good enough. It's a feeling, right? But there's also a voice there. And a lot of times that voice will be heard in the head. But also a lot of times you will hear it. It's like a little voice sitting on the right hand shoulder yakking into your ear. Not all the time, but a lot of times that's where people really can, if you really want to identify the energy of this, that's a lot of times where that energy lies. So now that's you started now to actually identify the voice. Now, it's bizarre 200 years ago, we didn't have this level of negativity run the show for us. And I think because we're the more and more we get disconnected from ourselves, that's when the voice can get really loud and it can really go and have a lot of control over us. And it's quite it's a very serious matter because I think a lot of times that people's critic and bully is so loud that it can lead to so many like depression. There's a lot of things on the back of this process that we're in unconsciously. So our job today is to really identify it, but also give people the tools to how to deal with it going forward. So, yeah. So then you can see people when the critic's really loud. They're suffering. They're miserable. They have no life form. It looks like some people when it's so loud, it looks hellish.
Mm.
If you watch people and their critic, it's really really pumping. Now, what I want to say, men's version of it's different to women. Believe it or not. So men's are usually about how they look, if they're strong enough as a man, or if they're good enough, or are they providing strong enough, or for their family. It's all it's quite external at some level for men, very visual. Not all of it, but it's got a different version where women are very locked into, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable. Men have that too, but men started branches off to a different version of it. Women's like, I'm a failure. So it's all the negative, really, really disgusting conversations that we would never do to other people. Or if we saw someone else doing that to somebody in the street, or in a situation where somebody would talk to somebody like that, we would call some kind of services like the police, the guards here in Ireland, whatever. We would say this person's getting abused.
Mm-hmm.
And I always talk to the clients, it's like, you would treat yourself like that, but you wouldn't treat someone else like that. So it's something to consider. So most of the time we're not even aware, and it gets, that voice gets loud whenever we're sort of feeling low, our mood is low, and you can see people who's depressed, it's got it really heavily going on. Or we say after, a lot of them talk about after a session the weekend where they had a lot of alcohol or whatever, that the anxiety in the voice gets really, really loud. So what else do I want to say about what causes, when you're with people and you don't feel secure with, or you feel a bit unsure of, that is probably the time where your inner bully is going crazy.
Like social anxiety and all that.
All of that comes in the back of, the voice being too loud. And then you see that message is getting constantly fed to you without you, as I said, it's most of the time unconscious because we don't have a process to actually, the morning we'll talk about what to do in the morning to catch this stuff. But if we start off unconscious in the morning, hey, it's going to have a fun day.
Yeah, that's funny because this morning I actually journaled and I literally wrote, I'm so sick of my head. I'm just so sick of it. And it's like, it's nearly like a dread when you're waking up in the morning. Yeah. So obviously it's running the show straight away.
Before your eyes wake up, you know? That's how mad it is, right? And you see most of the time people are rushing to work, people are rushing doing stuff or getting the kids to work, to school, and and you can see, I don't see people be aware of it. And it doesn't, and it takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of practice and a lot of discipline, right? To actually, and it's a daily practice. It's not something you do and then you move on and it's not getting allowed anymore. The minute you just get distracted, it just turns the volume up. And especially see in times where you could be really stressed at work. But part of that stress might not be so much what's going on at work. It could be the actual what you're sitting with and what your internal dialogue is.
I'm going to give you an example of one that recently has come to my conscious awareness, but I've been doing consciously for as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
And you might see something different in this or tell me if it's, but this is what's coming to me. So basically, for as long as I can remember, every morning I look in the mirror and look at how far my belly is out or in.
Yeah. So that's your measure. That's where it measures from. Yeah. Crazy.
And then I pull down and then I say, and I'm either happy with it or I'm not. And then I pull down my t-shirt and off I go. And that little do I know that practice every day is an unconscious wear and tear of that. I'm never going to be happy with what my body looks like. If I'm judged.
If you're measuring it from there, yes, your self-esteem, right?
Yeah.
And that's quite distorted because I actually had this example in my head. I look in the mirror sometimes and I think, oh my God. Right? I'm like, oh my God, you look blah, 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 whatever it looks like at that moment, but it's not a good one. Right? So you look ugly or you look old or you look whatever, or look at the state of you, whatever, right? The moment you do that, if you become conscious of what you're doing, you go back to that mirror and you demand to see something different.
Yeah.
Because it's all body shaming, it's all shame-based process. So then you're distorted, and then your vision of what you see is coming from that negative thought, that negative process.
The inner critic.
The critic, it's that constant critical
judgment.
Yeah, judgment and view of yourself, which is not true or not real. It is something that you've developed or learned or got told as a child. So I see people criticize children without that they actually don't know what they're saying to the child, and their self-esteem goes so low that gives an opportunity to really develop a very strong, high volume critic. The internal critic will be very loud for children who has been given a high self-esteem.
And that's been that's so unconscious for me up until recently.
Yeah.
And, and I'm 32 now. So when did that start? As long as I can remember. So it's just, but I grew up in the age of Weight Watchers and diets and low fat and all that.
Yeah.
So I do the more
body shaming.
The more that comes to my awareness, obviously. So now I have to work to kind of shift that narrative, turn the volume down. And what you're saying is just demand a different voice.
Even to go back and have a different look, you'll see something different when you demand to see something different, right? No, it's interesting. You're saying you got body shaming going on, your critic's really strong in there. Or it could be education for some people. It could be sport for some people.
Yeah.
It'll be different things, but it could be all of it. But there'll be certain particular parts of your life where you will use the critic will hone in on. and use that to really whip the ass off you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting.
For most women, it'll be body. It'll be, I'm too fat, I'm too ugly. It's all that body shame. And I think for men, it's a different version. It'll be, I'm not rich enough. I'm not, strong enough. I'm not tall enough. My shoulders not wide enough. So similar, but not so similar because of the different mindset.
Yeah.
And then, you look back and you see, the conversations you've had, the teachers is another one where, they don't know how to create self-esteem in the children. So even at home, if you were teaching them high self-esteem, yeah, they've got some chance, right? But most people don't know how to do that, right? Then we go to school, and there's so much happens in the schoolyard, in the school. It's something you cannot escape. When people say to me, well, how can I protect my kids? I say you can't. You can educate them. Tell them how it works. Give them power. Empower them by really giving them a sense of this is something of what we as a development stage for us that we can take control over. So you don't give people high self-esteem. You teach them how to have high self-esteem.
To develop
that muscle and develop that awareness. Yeah. And that education.
So what you're saying is the inner critic and the inner bully is not real. It's like a concoction of your emotions, your thoughts, and your feelings.
It's actually, as I say, go back to part of the brain's development stage, right? So then, if I take a brain scan while you're being in that really negative place, right? It's a part of the brain, right? It's gonna be on fire.
Yeah.
Right? But when it's less, it'll be much calmer looking. It'll be less. You won't have that level of activity in the brain, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because I was listening to a podcast, and people probably know this book, The Chimp Paradox, by Professor Steve Peters, I think his name is. And he talks about the chimp brain and the human brain.
Yeah.
The chimp brain is the emotional brain that we're talking about now. And then the human brain is the frontal lobe, which is, so the human brain is concerned with facts and logic. And the chimp brain is concerned with emotions. But he says, if you're like you just said there, if you do a brain scan and your chimp is on fire, so when I'm looking in the mirror and I'm like attachment, judgment to the size of my belly, like the blood flow is all here in the limbic system.
Yeah.
And that's where then I have to kind of, is it then in that moment you go, okay, that's the chimp talking, that's the inner critic, that's the bully. Let me go to my human brain, which is facts and logic, which is my body is what it is. And it's not, there's no shame. It just is.
Well, when you go to getting really present, you can go to the part where if I take judgment out of this, because it's all judgment, right? And when you're in the judgment stage, you're still in the critic. You're still being critical, right?
Yeah.
If you're not coming from the critical part of the brain, there is no judgment.
It's just facts and logic.
It's just, I've got a body here, I've got a belly, right? And then it's up to me where I'm going to judge it or not.
Yeah.
Right? A body is part of my body. Belly is part of my body. Or my legs are too big, right? No, that's a judgment.
Well, the facts and logic is they all serve a purpose, and I need it. If I didn't have one,
but also, we're very programmed at the moment how this should look.
Yeah. And that's so interesting because we're programmed through society, through media, because all those like platforms evoke emotion in us. So of course,
Make
it's going
wrong.
to go to our emotional mind. It's going to go to our monkey mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I just had a little bit like breakthrough there. So how
are you having a therapy session?
Well, I know. I knew this was going to be it though, because like,
yeah, you could see.
I said to you before, I was like, look, Gabrielle, I'm coming on here, you know, no frills.
Yeah, you're going to do this one.
I feel like my inner critic is running the show. So I'm hoping that like with something maybe that I, you know, someone will relate and be able to, you know,
yeah,
see
of course they will, Ciara.
That if it's a real life thing. So what's the tips then to...
Oh, I tell you where my critic comes up really strong.
I know, I was going to ask you that.
Yeah. Mine is really strong. It's getting less, right? But when I started podcasting, oh my God, my mind went crazy. The judgment, how I was even going to get a specialized person to teach me how to move my jaw, how to talk. It was really funny. I'm like, oh my God, I need to get someone to teach me we haven't done a research. That's how crazy. No, it doesn't mean I don't do that. But where it's coming from, it's pure judgment on myself. Negative. Make wrong. Oh my God. It's all coming from, it's a mess. I'm disaster. Not good enough. All that shit comes up.
Yeah.
But it's automatic. It's an automatic process. Comes up, bang, and it'll get you. The minute you're unsure, I wasn't confident at the start. Because it was a process I've never done.
You're not familiar.
It's not familiar for me, and you know, I like to have to be comfortable with something that, and my confidence sort of grows in that. Where at the start it was like my jaws wasn't even moving. And I'm like, oh my, my critic was having a party.
Your chimp was in there banging around,
my chimp was like
enjoying itself.
It's a birthday party. It's Christmas. Do you get it? But no, there is tips for everyone in all of this, right? So the first thing I ask people, all my clients, is if you've worked with me, you know, one of the process I ask people to do is to journal out that negative thoughts in the morning. First thing, get your pen and paper, get your coffee, whatever it is, and get all that stuff on. You know, I feel this, I feel shit, I feel da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Tear it up, throw it in the bin. Also, what I do in therapy is do an exercise where we really identify the version you've got of the critic. So you become more and more conscious and get more and more present to how those conversations flow and attack, basically, right?
Yeah.
But we also put processes in place to see what's missing. So it's a two-pronged thing. So there's something like, you know, there's lack of love, lack of compassion. So there's a lack of, whenever that's really loud, that I get people to study more about how they can apply that to their life. And that can sort of like neutralize the voice a lot.
Yeah.
But the main one, which is, I'll explain the process now, is I get you to name your critic. Put a name on it, right? So that can be someone who, it has to be a person's name. And it's really useful if someone's been really critical to you all your life, or you had a friend who was a real bitch to you, or a real, you know what? If you name it, if you have a relationship, an emotion attached to it, where you know that was a really critical person, or it could be a teacher, it could be anything. As long as you have that strong relationship with it, so you can name it whatever you want. As long as it's someone you can identify and relate to and have that sense of emotion around it. It's really important.
Yeah.
Then what we've done is we've taken it from the unconscious level, right? We've we've made it more external. So that means your view, you can view it from the external point rather than it being so unconscious and internal.
Yeah.
And then I tell you, go to war on it.
Yeah.
We've got to have conversations with it. Now, some people try to negotiate with it. It's not that, right?
Yeah.
You've got to get really, really vicious with it and take control of it. And it's like, you motherfucker, excuse me, but it has to be that strong. It has to be, get, what, out of here. I also tell people, put it in the cupboard before you leave. Lock the door. And then put a process in place where you decide how you're going to feel that day. Feel love, compassion. So you design your day. So that's what's going to keep that sort of level of consciousness, number one, intention, number two, and not have that unconscious level of negative thought run the show for you.
Yeah.
Now, does it take it away, or does it just every day then? You will improve every day, but does that mean every day it's never going to show up again? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
You got to be watching for it 24/7. And it will come and get you. As I said to you, the minute I started podcasting, I was off. That's the trigger, right? The judgment. Yeah. It's always going to be in judgment, right?
Yeah.
So a clue will be, am I judging myself right now? And what am I judging myself for?
Mm-hmm.
The
podcast I listened to was The Diary of a CEO. It's his most recent one. And the professor says much the same thing as you.
Yeah.
If he feels like his chimp is, being activated or taken over, chimp meaning inner critic, monkey mind.
Yeah.
He just has a conversation with it and goes, right, not now. Say something important coming up. Not now. When we get home, you can say all you want, but not now. I'm leaving you here.
Yeah.
I'm going to go do my job.
Yeah.
And then he comes back and he goes, right, have it out with me.
Yeah.
And then he actually says find out what way to interact with it. So he uses sarcasm and humor with his chimp because that he feels that disarms it a little bit. And he goes, yeah, come on, have your say now. That kind of so it's kind of finding a way to. This might sound a bit like it does. Maybe does it sound a bit woo woo? I don't know. It's but I mean, we're having a chat with ourselves anyways all the time. So why don't we just make it count? Make it productive.
Do you know, it's really interesting, right? That's how strong that process is in us. That we're it's actually a really serious process that it causes a lot of pain and a lot of suffering. So that we don't find that whoa, but when we go to create something that's going to work, we're actually we're so locked into the negative that when we start saying, right, let's do something that we can contradict or take charge of it, it starts to sound whoa. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so there was my inner critic coming in, which sounds like because we start to talk out loud.
But do you know how quick you can get it now, Ciara?
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah. This guy works with athletes, footballers, all that to get them over the line to just that 1%. It's about your mindset, how to achieve that, to quiet that mind and go in and get the job done.
Yeah. Well,
to the best of your ability.
Exactly. So Tommy, who's the guy doing my podcast, and he's like the producer, he's after telling me, he sends me a message on the phone. He's after saying meditation. And of course, meditation.
Yeah, of course.
First thing in the morning. You start your meditation, you calm your mind down. So the more activity as well. I must remember to tell you that the meditation really takes you into your heart. So it really brings you to a place where there's no judgment in your heart. There's no activity negative. So that's why meditation is a really massive thank you, Tommy. That's why meditation. Thanks you for that reminder. That's why meditation is so important.
And
so many things, but especially
meditation, yes, but meditation is still, sometimes for me, meditation works a lot, obviously, to get my mindset right. But if my mind is going mad, I actually only last week started doing breath work.
Yeah, breath work.
Because the meditation still keeps you in your head to a certain extent, but the breath work takes you out of your head and into your body. It nearly like numbs your mind, I don't even know if that makes sense.
It overrides it. Yeah.
Overrides. So, you know, if my thoughts start to have an impact on, like, I get a burning sensation, you know, between my chest and my tummy, that happens, then I hit, like, it's just a 10-minute Wim Hof breath work. And it takes me out of my head and into my body. And that actually worked for me as well, I found recently.
But also that's what the ice work does. Yeah. So that cold shower in the morning, that's another process that you can add into it's all about calm down your nervous system. If you're living that fight or flight and that nervous system is too high, your thoughts are going crazy. Yeah. So what we do with the meditation or the cold showers or any of the journaling is we're bringing our thoughts, we're calming the nervous system down, and then we can enter into the heart. Now, one of the things that I really love is with the hypnosis meditation, you do both. You do breath and meditation. Yeah. That's why it's much more powerful than just hitting. If you hit meditation when you're just in the head, it ain't going to have the same impact as when you have to go through the breath. Yeah. You know. Yeah. Cool. So I think we've got loads of tips in there today. Yes, I think so. Bottom line is your inner critic is not reality. It's a voice in your head. It's not real. It's not true. There's no reality in it. But identifying and being self-aware, like I said, the thing I was doing was for probably 20 years now. Yeah. So, you know, well, just to tell you, the fact is, it starts when you're 7 years old, because that's when your critical condition starts. So 25 years old. So, you know, when 7 years old, all of that development stage up until then is now going to the critic has already started to take. It's got full permission to go for it. Yeah. So just be aware of those little things like that you might say to yourself or do. Like if you reprimand yourself for something small, like it's just, you know, that is your inner critic. Yeah, and you could also say, even though it's not real or true, it's quite distorted as well. It's like when you look at your stomach, it depends on where your voice is that day. Is it big? Is it small? Is it nice? Is it not nice? Is it ugly? Whatever. All the critical stuff goes boom. Yeah. Some people, mine's is legs. Probably for me, it's not my stuff. No, it's all different body parts. Some people, it's how they look. All of it. And would you go as far to say is like critical, even if I'm happy with it that day, that is still critical, is it? Still, you still have an opinion of it. An opinion, yeah. Yeah. Because, like, you know, people always ask for critical feedback, and that's kind of like, you know, can be. It's just it is what it is. If I'm a part of your body, my stomach every day on how big or small it is, or how far out it sits, or how far out it doesn't sit, that's still a critique. It's still a judgment, right? Still a judgment. Right, I'll let you know how I get on with my. Can't wait till tomorrow morning, Ciara. Text me. Okay, so look, I'd say thank you everyone for listening, and we hope we have given you loads of value, and please subscribe to my podcast, and we have loads and loads of more information and tips for you going forward. Thank you. Thank you. Bye. Bye. You've been listening to the Rebellious Therapist podcast. For more information, you can follow me, the Rebellious Therapist, on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. You can find further information on my website, therebellioustherapist.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.